We're learning more about a massive security breach exposing millions of federal workers' personnel records and security clearances.
It appears Chinese hackers were involved. So who should be concerned and what's the overall impact?
Our resident expert, Thor Schrock, is back to explain from Schrock Innovation.
Hi, Thor.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
So what happened here? What's the deal?
All right. Well, basically, the Office of Personnel Management, which if you take their acronym, OPM, and say it really fast, it just sounds like opium, because that's what their IT department must have been smoking.
Thor.
Because, I mean, seriously,
I think we know how he feels.
Right.
This is a grade A Charlie Foxtrot cybersecurity breach. I mean, this is bad. So for over a year, hackers reportedly, the U.S. government says they were Chinese hackers. Of course, the Chinese government denies that. No one really knows if it was the government of China, if it was an independent hacking thing in China, or if maybe it was Russia making it look like it was China, because that's not hard to do. So somebody for over a year had access to OPM's database of federal personnel. So who is in the database of OPM's federal personnel? If you were ever in the military, ever, going back ever. If you ever received a paycheck from the federal government, if you were an employee of the federal government, if you ever got a security clearance, if you ever worked for a contractor who worked for the federal government and required you to get a security clearance, if and here in Nebraska, we have lots of those kind of people because of the Offutt Air Force Base. So basically, if you fall into that category, like my sister does, she works for Department of Immigration. So if you fall in that category, your personal information, your name, your address, your phone numbers, your email addresses, all that stuff was taken.
Relatives, too.
And everybody they contacted to do a background check on you. So if you've ever been through a military background check for a clearance, they will go back and talk to your high school friends.
Yes.
I mean, the FBI is very thorough, but all those contacts and all their names and addresses.
The number of people affected here is much greater than I knew just by reading some of the headlines.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then on top of that, if there was any disciplinary issue within your job that never saw the light of day, think David Petraeus. That eventually did see the light of day, but he had an affair, right? CIA found out about it. And it's a security risk, because now what happens is, so let's say Joe has an affair.
He's vulnerable to blackmail.
Exactly, and Joe is works for a government department, doesn't deal with anything really important, but let's say his wife works for Lockheed Martin, and she works on some really cool space weapon that no one knows about, except the Chinese. So the Chinese will come in and say, it would be terrible if your wife found out about this affair. And I'll tell you what, this can all go away. We'll even give you $10,000. Just to sweeten the deal. But you need to give us your wife's work password. Do you know what it is? And, poor Joe might say, well, gee, I don't want to lose my marriage, and I get 10 grand, I could pay off some bills. So, what's it going to hurt anyone? So he does it, right? But then you never get out. You're in forever.
Is that legit? Because that sounds like a Tom Cruise movie, but that could really happen.
Oh, gosh, that's how espionage works.
That,
99% of espionage is human social engineering.
Let's talk about the people who are in those categories you mentioned there, who may have worked with Offutt, who worked for a contractor, who did work for the government, all of those folks. What can they do at this point to protect their identity?
It's tough. See, here's the problem. If it was the Chinese government, they're not interested in stealing your identity. They're interested in spear phishing attacks. And a spear phishing attack is when you have a targeted attack on a specific individual to get information from that individual that will further some other goal. So they're not going to try to empty your bank account. China's got plenty of money. They don't need your money. They don't need your retirement. They want to get in there and find out everything they can find out about you to blackmail you, basically, and turn you into an intelligence asset. And literally, this has set back American intelligence probably 20 years going back, as well as going forward probably another 20 years.
Was it preventable? Because if the government can't protect personnel, are we all in trouble?
Well, here's the thing. In cybersecurity, we've talked about this on the show before. Somebody comes up with a better weapon, somebody comes up with a better shield, requiring the attacker to come up with, yet again, a better weapon and then a better shield. So it's not uncommon that there would be a breach. What's uncommon is it would go undetected for a year, which means everyone just assumed, no one's going to want this. And, they're doing whatever, watching porn, smoking opium, whatever they were doing at OPM, hey, we've seen the news stories, guys. It actually happens, all right? So this is, you have to laugh or you'll cry. So as an individual, what can you do to protect yourself? there's not a ton you can do. You know, one of the things I'm beginning to learn in life, there's a lot of bad news stories out there, and you can get all worked up about them, but in the end, it just gives you a heart attack because you can't do anything about it. Well, here's what you can do. Number one, your personal technology needs to be secure, more so now than ever. If you fall into that category especially, get Norton Endpoint. Normally, it's really a sales point that we can say it's the same stuff the federal government uses.
You don't want to say that right now? It's not a good major selling tool.
But the reason it is because it's the best you can get.
It's commercial grade. You can't walk into
Yes.
a retail store
This
and
isn't,
get it.
yeah, this isn't like, you know, McAfee that you pick up off the shelf and put on your computer. This is going to do the best you can get.
And you offer it at Schrock.
We do
That's
offer
what you
it
talk
at
about.
Schrock. Secure Updater. We'll keep all of your third-party software up to date. All those third-party programs, if people have vulnerabilities that they can use to get into those programs, those will walk right through any antivirus you have. You got to keep that up to date. But here's the one thing that's going to take a little bit of effort, aside from opening the wallet, is you need to do a password roll. Maybe even change your email address, because if the federal government had your email address, the hackers now have your email address. And the email address can act as a gateway. So if I figure out your email password, chances are you might also use the same email password for your financial accounts or for other things. And I can really, getting that one password, dig very deep into your life and learn a lot about you. So you need to have different zones for your passwords. Have a financial zone, have a media zone like iTunes, Amazon, Netflix, separate password for that. But here's the thing, you need to roll all of them. Now,
How often?
I would, security experts recommend monthly. Realistic people say every 6 months, but even I know that most people aren't going to do that. So here's the thing. You're supposed to pick a completely random password, 8 characters long, with capitals, lowercase, numbers, and symbols, that does not contain any component of a word. That's considered a secure password. They are impossible to remember. And so what people will sometimes do is write it down on a Post-it note and stick it to their monitor. For a home user, that's not a big deal. If you're at the office or something like that, don't stick them to your monitor. Don't stick them under the keyboard. That's the first place everybody looks. If you need to write them down, but keep them someplace away from the computer. So if somebody gets access to the physical computer, they don't have access to all your passwords.
I know that some people put them in their phones. On their, like an iPhone has that Note application.
Yes.
Is that secure or not?
I don't have any information that says it's not secure, especially with the new encryption algorithms on iPhones and things like that. Having your passwords stored digitally is just an invitation to have them all stolen digitally. So in this case, especially if you're in this attack group, a low-tech solution would probably be best.
Wow.
Put them in the safe, put them in your nightstand drawer, put them in the desk across the room from the computer. So when you need them, you can open the drawer and pull them out, but they're not saved in the computer. They're not saved in a password management utility, because if you have all your passwords saved in one place digitally, no matter where it's saved, if the U.S. government can get hacked, your password utility company can get hacked.
This is a mess.
It's bad.
If you want to learn more about, he mentioned Endpoint, and he also mentioned Secure Updater. You can call any of the locations. We just showed you that information, and our thanks to you, Thor.
Thank you, guys.
For coming in.
Thanks,
Such
Thor.
great news.
Yep.
I mean, I
And
feel really good
Jurassic
about
Park,
this.
they could have changed at least one thing in the movie. It was the exact same movie all over again, except they had
It was updated?
the guy from Guardians of the Galaxy was the main character.
But I heard they got great reviews. We got to go, though. Thanks, Thor. If you're into health and wellness, you might track what you eat.
Next, the new piece of wearable technology described as a body manager. Justine Santinello will show us how it works.